Hey, Coach, thank you so much for the books.
Sure, Coach. No problem.
So after this, we're gonna auction out the one book was sold for like 1.5 the other night. So
Which one was that? The
Oh,
NBA?
The Jordan one.
Oh, the Jordan book. Okay.
the Jordan.
When they found out that you autographed it, the price jumped.
So,
I
so
thought
we're
the NBA book would go the highest.
so we're live on YouTube. That's the YouTube. So we're live. Okay, Teddy, you can play the. Thank you.
Hashtag Angon Pilipinas. Blackwater would like to support our heroes of the front line who are risking their health and well-being to attend to COVID-19 patients. We aim to provide the frontliners of the Pasig City General Hospital hygiene kits which they can use daily. Blackwater, smell good, feel good. This webinar series is brought to you by Hoop Coaches International in cooperation with Blackwater. Smell good, feel good. This coaching webinar series would like to give special thanks to the following. Samahang Basketball ng Pilipinas Coaches Commission Head, Coach Jong Yochiko. Basketball Coaches of the Philippines President, Coach Louis Gonzalez. Catskills Head, Coach Alan Ricardo, and frontliner Christopher Top Juliano.
All right. Good evening again, attendees, and good evening to all. To my panel, to our resident sports psychologist, Teddy Villasor. Good evening, Teddy.
Good evening, Coach. Good evening, Coach.
And of course,
Rick, good evening.
all right. And of course, broadcaster Rick Olivares. Good evening sa'yo, Rick.
Good evening sa inyo lahat. Good to have you on board, Coach Norman.
All right. So, yun, sinabi mo rin ni Rick sa inyong lahat. And for those listening from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, hello. And we also have some attendees from Singapore and Indonesia. So again, I'm so excited to have, again, you mentioned Coach Norman Black, a Grand Slam coach, and I've been a San Miguel beer fan during my basketball life. So, you know, since someone that I really look up to, and I followed all the way from Ultra, and you'll hear the drums with the shiboom shiboom during those times, and you know, I'm a fan and we've been supporting, and I was so happy when they won the Grand Slam in 1989. I was in third year high school, so I can still remember that. So again,
that old.
no, mabata ka pa kasi, Coach, kaya gano'n. But without further ado, I'd like to pass the floor to Rick Olivares to introduce the five-time UAAP champion from Ateneo. So from Ateneo to from Atenean to Atenean coach. Go.
All right, he's one of the brightest basketball minds you have in the country. Ironically, he started out as one of our most bemedaled imports in the Philippine Basketball Association. He reinvented himself into this top flight coach with 11 PBA championships to his name. Obviously a Grand Slam coach, as you mentioned earlier, Coach Ariel, and a five-time UAAP champion, a five-peat, no? Something that is
Five straight.
has only been accomplished once by the UE Red Warriors a long time ago under Baby Dalupan. And this man, you know, after he finishes his stint with Ateneo, he immediately guided the Talk and Text team to a PBA title. Showing us his old black magic, none other than Mr. Norman Black. Good evening.
Mr. 100%.
Yeah.
Magandang gabi. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Coach, for joining us, and you know, for all the attendees. You're like the most requested, one of the most requested coach to have, and yeah, we're so elated to have you.
Appreciate that, guys. Thank you.
Coach, for you know, I know Rick made that introduction, but how was your journey from, of course, playing the NBA for the Detroit Pistons, and so, and then going to the PBA with a team. I don't want to mention the team yet because I want to be a contest for all those listening. But before San Miguel, there's another team that Coach joined, and so Coach, from your no. What was your basketball story leading to coaching?
Well, my NBA experience was probably my least successful experience. I didn't really play very much when I was there for a very short period of time. Not too many people know, I actually, when I first got out of college, I was with the Washington Bullets. They were the Washington Bullets then, and I got released right before the season started. And that was my first disappointment as far as basketball was concerned, because my high school career was pretty successful. My college career, I was very productive, but I got cut from the Washington Bullets team and ended up in the CBA. The CBA is the Continental Basketball Association. I guess you could say it's the D League now, or the G League that they have in the NBA right now. And from there, I just had to work my way back up again. Eventually got picked up by the Detroit Pistons towards the end of the season in 80-81 for a 10-day contract. Didn't play very much when I was there. When I did play, didn't play as well as I would have liked. Got invited back for the summer league that following summer after this NBA season was over for the Detroit Pistons in Los Angeles. And somehow, some way, through Jimmy Mariano and Frank Hahn, who was the manager of the Teflon Fiber Makers at that time, I was able to end up in the Philippines. And I might have just given away that question that you were going to ask a little bit later. Sorry about that.
That's all right. That's all right. At least they have a clue.
They have to get it right now, at least.
Yeah.
We'll see if they're listening, Coach.
I ended up playing here in the Philippines in 81 for the Teflon Fiber Makers, and then I played in 82, obviously for San Miguel Beer, and also in 83 for the Great Taste Coffee team. And headed into 1984, the PBA set the height limit, I believe it's 6'3", and I'm about 6'4¼ so I was not able to play in that league. So I set out 1984, which is also the year that I got married to my wife, Carmen Davila. And I basically was here in the Philippines, and I was working for Vintage. I think it was called Vintage back in those days, for Bobong Velez with the television TV telecast. And in 1985, I was just asked by Mr. Dandin Kawanko to become the head coach of the San Miguel Beermen. And it was very much a surprise to me. I had never coached a day in my life. The only teaching I had done was on Burlington Basketball Tips, which was one of the shows that I had under the Vintage title. And that's how my coaching career started. I was actually given the job, to be quite honest with you. I didn't really apply for it, but I was quite lucky at the beginning of my career because I was still a pretty productive player. I was still averaging about 40-20 a game. And it's easier to get people to follow you if you're producing. And because I was a player coach, I was the second player coach behind Sonny Jaworski, who became a player coach that year also. Because I was a player coach, my performance on the court helped me a great deal as far as my coaching was concerned. Luckily for me, I had been under some really good coaches here in the Philippines. I actually played for Baby DeLupa, I played for Tommy Manotoc. These two guys ended up being two of the top coaches ever in the history of PBA basketball, Philippine basketball. And of course, my college coaches and my high school coach had a big influence on me. So I basically just formulated my philosophy on how I wanted my teams to run based on how I had been coached over the years and based on my talent, because I've always been a pretty good defensive player. So even back in high school and college, so I always wanted my teams to be defense oriented. But at the same time, I wanted them to be a running teams, because that's what I used to do as a player. I was somewhat of a gazelle, and the fact that I like to get up and down the court as quickly as possible. So that's how I actually formulated my coaching philosophy. But it was difficult in the beginning. You know, I was very fortunate that I had Derek Pumaran, who now coaches the De La Salle Green Archers, and Pilo Pumaran as my assistant coaches during those days, because they really helped me a great deal.
Yes, Coach Derek was with us last night, and he mentioned that he was part of your coaching staff.
Yes, he was my first assistant coach. And we actually started coaching together exactly at the same time. Both he and I were hired by Mr. Dandin Kawanko on the same day. to coach the San Miguel Beermen.
All right.
Coach
So,
Norman, Coach Derek said yesterday that you're very open, you're a good listener, you're very passionate about the game of basketball, and in terms of your offense, you're a setup guy. These are some of the things that he said when he was with us yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like I said, if we can get out and run, then I want to run, believe me, because that's the way I was as a player. I was not as effective in a half-court offense because I wasn't maybe as skilled as a Billy Ray Bates. But if I could get up and down the court and get out in the open court, then I had a tendency of being able to glide and move very well in a fast type situation. So I would really like my teams to be that type of team where they get up and down the court quickly. And I've had those teams over the years, but you know, you coach depending on your talent. And that's the way I've always coached. If I have the players, when I coached the San Miguel Beermen, particularly when I had the Grand Slam team, we basically didn't really worry much about what the other teams were doing. We let them worry about what we were doing. And we wanted to get up and down the court and score 125, 130 points a game. So if they couldn't keep up, they couldn't keep up. But that's the way we wanted to play. But at the same time, when you coach teams that maybe don't really have that talent to be able to get up and down the floor and outrun the other team, or you don't have the depth to be able to do that, then you have to adjust. And it means setting up plays and running a lot of plays, then you do that. I mean, you should be flexible as a coach. I have been known to have a lot of plays. There's no question about that. So hopefully I can be flexible and do both.
all right. There's some questions here. What from all the way from Ghana, coach? How can coaches sustain their philosophy with the changing trends in basketball coaching?
Well, a lot of it depends on your talent. Everything depends on your talent as far as I'm concerned. I'll just give you some examples. Coaching philosophy can change depending on who you're coaching. And I say this because when I was at Ateneo, I coached at Ateneo for 8 years. And when I first arrived at Ateneo, obviously I coached the likes of Larry Fonacher and L.A. Tenorio and Boggs Bagia and those guys. And I had a pretty good team. I have to be quite honest with you. They may not have been the best team in the UAP at that particular time, but they were pretty good. As you can tell, some of those guys went on to be great pros. So, but I didn't really have a very deep team, if you understand what I'm trying to say. As I stayed there for a while, I was there 2-3 years, I was able to recruit. And all of a sudden I was able to recruit the type of players that I thought could help me win basketball games. I was able to recruit size. I was able to recruit quickness. I was able to recruit guys with good defensive ability. And of course, they go to Ateneo, so they also have to study. But my philosophy changed because of that. When I had L.A. Tenorio my first year, everything was focused on L.A. And I found out that, and I'm just giving you a way that you can change your philosophy depending on who you're coaching. I found out that teams would take L.A. out of the game by just either boxing wanting him, trapping him every time he had the basketball, because we were so dependent on him being the one to run our offense. Our shooting guard, who was Magnum and Barry, wasn't a great ball handler at that particular time. And most of the ball handling chores, really, we relied on L.A. Tenorio to bring the ball up. So if teams were successful taking the ball out of his hands, we suffered a lot. But after a while, I was able to recruit. I was able to recruit to the point where I had a guy by the name of Kurt Long, who was my 3-man, who we actually turned into a point forward. So now I could get Jai Reyes, I could get Eric Salamet, I could get Kurt Long. I had everybody running our offense. Whoever had the basketball became the point guard. So now I had a much more flexible offense. So my philosophy changed from relying on one guy to be able to set up everything to now having a flexible offense where I had 3 guys who could set the offense for me. And if Kurt had the ball, then Jai would become the 2-man, Eric would become the 3-man. You know, we had more flexibility. So a lot of times your philosophy can change depending on your talent, the type of talent you have. This year with Moralco, this is probably the best team that I've ever had as far as talent is concerned. And I'm just being straight and honest with you. I'm a little bit sad right now that we're on lockdown and we're not able to play games. I think this would have been the all Filipino that we would have been able to do much better because I think I have the talent now. And, it goes with almost everything you do on the basketball court. For instance, when I had Greg Slaughter as my center in college, I didn't really care whether we forced middle or whether we forced baseline because I knew he was sitting there in the middle. We'll run you baseline, we'll run you middle. We don't care. He's sitting there. He's going to defend that paint for us. But now my feeling is I don't have a Greg Slaughter. So now maybe I have to force everything to the sideline. I have to push everything to the baseline. Luckily for me, I just picked up Raymond Almazan, who's a pretty good shot blocker, who can help me with that type of philosophy. But you can see how your philosophy can change depending on who you're coaching. When I coached the Grand Slam team back in 1989, I had a guy by the name of Mon Fernandez. Mon Fernandez was a game changer. I mean, here's a 6'5" guy who was taller than me, actually, because I'm only about 6'4¼ and he's a legit 6'5". Here's a 6'5" guy who's not only getting the rebounds, but he's bringing the ball up like he's a guard. So all of a sudden, we can push the basketball from the 1-man to the 5-man because my big man, my center, is a big man who can not only get the rebound, but he brings the ball up like he's a point guard. So, your philosophy can change. I hope that answers your question, but you should always analyze your talent. Don't be hardline in the fact that everything has to be done a certain way because this is the way you're always used to doing things. I was able to catch your conversation with Tim Cone the other day when you interviewed him. It was very interesting that he has the same philosophy. His offense has really evolved over the years where he's not strictly just a triangle guy anymore. And I just played against him. I mean, I don't even think they even have plays at this point. They just move without the basketball and they're a great passing team. So he has adjusted over the years and he has been able to evolve as far as his philosophy is concerned also.
Oh, you mentioned Meralco Bolts. So it's a question from Coach Ian. So you've been in the finals multiple times, and yeah. What's the missing piece in that hump going to win the championship? I know you mentioned the big man, Gaming Raymond Almazan, but what's the missing piece?
Well, we've run up against a very good team in Ginebra. They're very well coached. They have a very good import. At least they've had a very good import in those 3 championship series that we played in Justin Brownlee. So we've actually lost to a very good team. Let's just be very straight about that. We've also haven't had a lot of luck as far as injuries are concerned. Each series, we've lost key players. I mean, one year, I think we lost J.D. Dillinger. We lost Cliff Hodge. We also lost Ranadel Del Campo. This past championship series, it was tied up 1-1. We just beat them in game 2. We're up by, I think, 8 or 10 points in game 3. And then Raymond Almazan goes down for knee injury and never returns in the series anymore. And the series is never the same because Japhet Aguilar and Greg Slaughter just take over. So, yeah, we lack bigs. I mean, there's no question about that. That's always been my weakness. That's why, if you notice, the Morocco team always does better in the second and the third conference because we use the imports as our big men to make up for our lack of ceiling. But at the same time, I mean, we could have played better. I mean, we could have shot the basketball better. Had never shot the basketball pretty well in the championship series. But injuries have, for some reason, they hit us at the wrong time. And as you know, whenever you get key injuries at the wrong time, it normally spells disaster.
Coach Norman, we have a question from Arwin. Arwin says, do you have any online training for your team amid the COVID pandemic / quarantine? If you do, how do you conduct it? Is it via Zoom, Google Meet, or do you just assign it individually? Thank you.
No, we don't have any type of online training for the players. We've just instructed them to do their best. We don't want to do anything that's going to make the players have to go out when they don't have to. We want to follow the rules and regulations of the government, which basically means, just like myself, I'm on lockdown. I've been in the house every day for the last, it seems like 8 weeks now. And my players should be doing the same, because there's the one thing we don't want to see happen is for one of them to get sick. So they should be very disciplined in the fact that they should be at home. Now, I talk to my players every week, and I know that some of them have better situations than others. Some of them actually live in villages. Some of them live in somewhat out in the province, even though they work here in the city. So they can move around a lot better than others. In other words, they can get out and jog. Maybe they have a little court in their front yard in their garage where they can take some shots. They can actually exercise. Other players actually live in condos where the condos have really been locked down. So they've had a much more difficult time being able to stay in shape. They have to run up and down their stairwells in their condo buildings. I mean, they have to be creative in what they can do. But we have not done anything where we've told the players that they should be together or they should be out trying to go against whatever rules the government has set up as far as our lockdown is concerned. What we've told them is do the best you can to stay in shape while you're at home. And more importantly, watch your intake of your food. Because I know for a fact that it's a lot easier to get back in shape if you don't gain a lot of weight. So watch what you eat, check your weight every day, and whatever you can do, do it. I mean, if you have a stationary, some of my guys, they ordered stationary bikes. Some of them have treadmills at home. Like Raymond Almazan is probably 100% already. He's ready to play because he has a treadmill at home, so he's able to work out at home. So some of these guys have the equipments at home to be able to at least stay in decent shape.
Thanks, Coach. We have another question from Leo. Leo asks, can you tell us more about the 1989 San Miguel Beer Grand Slam team? Thank you.
Oh, probably well, you have to understand, we won the last conference of 1987 with Bobby Ray Parks. We won the first conference in 1988 and the third conference in 1988 with myself as the import. In 1989, they set the height limit at 6'3", so I was not able to play. And Bobby Parks had moved to another team already. He had moved to the Shell team, so we weren't able to recruit him. So we had actually been winning leading up into 1989. Now you have to remember that in 1988 in the second conference, we made a big trade. We traded Abid Gudabin, who was a very, very good player and who had just won a championship with me in the first conference in 1988, and also with Bobby Ray Parks in the third conference of 1987. We traded him for Mon Fernandez. And I'm not saying that we could not have won a championship or a Grand Slam with Abid Gudabin because we had already done it. So there's a possibility we could have won a Grand Slam with him. But I can tell you this, Mon made a big difference in our team when he came in because he gave us a lot of versatility. I mean, he was multi-talented. He's the only player in the league to lead the league in scoring, rebounding, assists, steals, blocks, name it. He's won the most championships of any player in the history of the league. So him coming in for us in 1988 was a big boost for us. And we also got lucky. I mean, not only did we have a good all-Filipino team, because we did win the all-Filipino in 1989, but in the first conference, we were able to recruit Michael Phelps, who had played with me in the third conference of 1988, where we won a championship against Bobby Ray Parks and Shell. And then he joined us as our import in 1989 in the first conference. And he was a very good player. He was an NBA veteran, a great three-point shooter. I mean, he could play. I mean, Michael Phelps could put it down, and he was very, very popular with the PBA fans also. And then in the third conference, we recruited a kid by the name of Keith Smart. I don't know whether you guys remember Keith Smart. He played for Indiana University for Bobby Knight. And he came in, and he was going to help us in the third conference to accomplish the Grand Slam. And I think maybe after his first or second game, he tore his groin muscle. And all of a sudden, everything turned bleak because we were saying, oh man, how are we going to win now? Keith Smart, who actually won a national championship in the NCAAs in the United States his senior year in college, he was going to be the guy to lead us to the Grand Slam. And all of a sudden, he has a pulled groin, and he's going to be out for at least 2 to 3 weeks. He's not going to be able to play. So now we had to go looking around for another player. And luckily for us, we got Enos Watley. And I don't know whether you guys can remember Enos Watley, but he was one of the most efficient imports I ever coached here in the Philippines. I mean, the guy shot over 60% of the floor from the floor. He shot over 80% from the foul line. He probably committed about 1 turnover a game and about 6 assists. He was just a great player. And he was quiet. He was easy to get along with. He blended immediately with the team. And he was one of the main reasons why we won the Grand Slam. He came in right away. He fit in right away. And he was able to help us accomplish the 3 championships in 1 year. So it was a great team. I mean, we just had, man, what can I say? I mean, our guards were Ricky Brown, Sambo Lim, Elmer Reyes, Hector Kama, Franz Pumaran. We had good role players in Ibis Dignadice, Alvin Ting, Jeffrey Graves. We had good imports, like I said. Of course, we had Mon Fernandez. We just had a very, very good team. And these guys, you know, the one thing I always say about that little stretch that we have, or that, not a little stretch, a long stretch that we have where we won maybe 7 out of 8 championships or 7 out of 9, something like that, was the fact that everybody checked their ego at the door, even myself for that matter. It was all about winning. Everything was about winning. Everybody knew they were good, but at the same time, we all sacrificed our individual accomplishments for the sake of the team. And that's how we were able to win so many games.
Coach, what's your memory of Ricky Brown?
Ricky Brown?
Yes, Coach. Ricardo
Well,
Brown.
I played with Ricky at Great Taste, if you guys remember. I played with him in 1983. And I guess Ricky, I would probably put him up there with Alan Kai Dick as probably the 2 best local scorers in the history of the PBA. When I say local, I mean Filipino players. Everybody knows Alan could score. I think he scored 79 points in 1 game. And he averaged a lot of points per game. Ricky was that type of player also. I don't think he ever scored 79 points in 1 game, but I'm sure he had very high averages in the mid-20s when he played in his early career in the PBA. And he was a scoring machine. But in addition to that, he could pass the basketball. He was one of the league leaders in assists. And in addition to that, he was a great defender. I mean, he was a big-bodied guy, barrel chest, and he would stay in front of you, and he was able to move his feet, and he could defend the basketball. So he was a good all-around player, a guy that I became very, very good friends with. I spent a lot of time with him off the basketball court as well as on the basketball court. And he was a good person. And a lot of times that's the type of players you want to play with, people who are also good people. But I would say Ricky was probably one of the top 5 players ever to play in the PBA.
Thanks, Coach. We have a question from one of our participants. Who or which is the toughest team you've ever faced as a player and as a coach?
As a player, probably the CRISPA team in 1983. We lost 2 championships to them. I played for Great Taste, and we lost the first conference and the third conference to them. And we lost mainly because of Billy Ray Bates, who I consider the best import ever to play here in the PBA. And they were just loaded. I mean, they were from top to bottom. I mean, they were just loaded from Boggs Adonado to Atoy Ko to Philip Cesar. I mean, I'm sorry. They just had so many guys coming off the bench that, I mean, I think Yo-Yo Villamin had joined the team, Bai Cristobal had joined the team, Mon Cruz had joined the team, Vadim Israel had joined it. They had picked up all these guys from the amateurs in the last year. And they were still the CRISPA juggernaut they were early in the earlier years. And we just couldn't beat them. I know some people say I got the best, the 100% award because I actually broke my hand in the championship right before the championship series, before the playoffs, and I still played. But still, they would have been tough to beat, even if I didn't have a broken hand. I mean, they would have been very, very tough to beat. And that was probably the best team that I ever played against as far as my playing career was concerned. The best team I've ever coached against is recent. I mean, I've lost 3 straight championships to the Inepro team. So obviously they've had a lot of success against my teams in the last couple of years. And like I said, we've had some key injuries, but at the same time, you can't take anything away from the Ginebra team. The fact that they're well coached, they're very, very talented, they're huge, they have a huge team. In addition to that, they probably have, I mean, if you want to call Alan Dorham the best import, then somehow, some way, you also have to give an award to Justin Brownlee because he's been great also in the last 3 or 4 years.
Coach, you have a question from Juan Carlos Perez. He says, your son is in Meralco now. What do you think is the difference with coaching him at the collegiate level and now in the professional level? Thank you.
Well, I never coached him at the collegiate level, so I can't really speak on that. I know his last year, he went into the year with a pretty serious injury. And I thought that hurt him a great deal as far as his exposure was concerned. In addition to that, let's face it, Ateneo had a very, very good team. And they won the championship, so can't complain about anything there. I was happy that Aaron decided to forgo his last year in college. Anyway, he was scheduled to graduate, and he did graduate from the university. And it also gave him a chance to get out and play, which you can't really develop if you don't play. So I was happy that the fact that he joined the Mighty Sports team in the Jones Cup, and they won the championship there. He wasn't a key player on that team, but he did have his moments. I was happy that he joined the NPBL because, let's face it, it's a very physical league, and it makes a man of you immediately because they call the game a little bit different there, and they allow a lot more contact. So he really got used to being having to play physical to be able to survive in that league. I was happy that he joined the D League, where he actually played very, very well. And I think he averaged a triple-double in the league. And that's what really convinced me that he could move on to the next level. If I had based it on what he did in Ateneo his senior year, then I would have never told him to go into the draft this year because he did not play very much. But when I watched him in the D League and I watched him in the MPBL, I felt he was ready for the pros already. I think that certain things he does that I think will be very, very useful. I know that my success with Chris Newsom and my success this past year with Bon Quinto has showed me the importance of, like I said, when I talked about Kurt Long earlier, having guys that do more than one thing, guys that can score the basketball, who can pass the basketball, who can rebound the basketball, guys that give you a lot more flexibility because of their versatility. And I think Aaron brings that to the table. In addition to that, he's a push guy. I mean, Aaron's better when he has the ball in his hands and when he can push the ball up and down the court. He's not going to be as good in the slow down game. So hopefully he'll be able to help us in that area because we have not been able to run very much in the last few years. We're more of a half-court team, a slow-down team, and I would like us to turn into more of a running team.
Thanks, Coach. We have another question from a participant. Participant asks, could you describe the coach's role as a motivator? How do you plan on motivating players and getting them to buy in into their role, their team role, their role in the team?
Well, that's always a challenge. That's always a challenge. That's probably one of the most important parts of being a coach, your ability to get the best out of your players and to motivate your players to give their all at all times, and also to follow and execute whatever the game plan is. That's always a challenge depending on your talent. I think, and I've learned this over the years, and even particularly with my Meralco team, I know we have not won a championship since I've been with Meralco, and all Filipinos have been a struggle for us. But the one thing I can say about my Meralco team is it's great to go to work every day. It's great to come in and coach guys that really want to work hard and improve their game. I think you have to invest in your players. I mean, you have to give time. We cannot lose the fact that coaches are basically teachers. That's what we are. And we have to give the time and we have to spend the time with our players to try to improve their skills and make them better players. whether it be their shooting or their ball handling or their passing, whatever it may be. When you invest that time in your players, players can feel that, and players will give back to you because of that. So that's one way of motivating your guys, to invest in them, to give them the time needed for them to improve their skills. Don't assume just because they're in the pro level that they're great players already, because even if they make it to the pros, their skills still have to be developed, their skills still have to be honed and improved every single year. So invest in your players as much as possible. 2, leadership is very important. I mean, you want to, Tim and I are the same age. I won't say what our age is because matanda ako. Matanda si Tim din, si Tim ko. Pero you have to adjust with your players. I remember when I was in college, I played for a coach who basically was more of a military guy. In other words, what he said went. And if he told you to dive through the floor, you dive through the floor. If he told you to run through the wall, you try to run through the wall. Maybe you couldn't do it, but you try it anyway because that's what he told you to do. Somehow, some way, things have changed over the years. So you have to be adjustable also. And you have to be able to listen a little bit more than maybe you would in the past, where you would just dictate, I want you to do this, just do it. I don't want to hear what you have to say. Now you may have to explain it a little bit more exactly what you're trying to accomplish with today's players. But to get the best out of them, you're going to have to find a way to relate to them. You're going to have to find a way to make them understand that the more hard work they put into their actions every single day, the more they're going to get out of it. If they don't work hard, they're not going to get anything out of it. So it's not just coming up with the right phrase all the time, you know, like saying something that really strikes them and then all of a sudden they go out and they do something great for you. That's not always motivation. Motivation is also your investment in them, your ability to be able to teach, your ability to get them to understand the importance of teamwork, of getting along with their players, understanding your system offensively, defensively, being able to execute that system. The one thing you have to understand about basketball, and you can see in all the great teams, I mean, even the Ginebra team, the San Miguel Beer team, they move as a team. In other words, if 4 guys are doing one thing and 1 guy is doing something else, that team is normally going to have breakdowns. When you find 5 guys who are on the same page and they're accomplishing their movements at the same time, they're like a rubber band. You pull here, I pull there. Those are the teams that are very successful and win. So you have to try to convince your players that they're not just there to be individuals, but they're there to be a team. And all of that, put all that together, and that's how you get them to play better. That's how you get to motivate them to do their best and to excel out there on the basketball court.
Thanks, Coach.
Coach, I've got a couple of questions here. Before I ask those questions, I wanted to ask you, did you know that Enos Watley was Michael Jordan's backcourt mate in Chicago?
Yes, I did know that. Yeah, I heard his name mentioned in the documentary I've been watching. Yeah. Enos Watley, I think when we got him, I think he was coming from Washington.
Washington, that's right. Yeah.
That's correct, yes.
That's great. Okay, these are a couple of tough questions, Coach. If you were to name your all Ateneo starting 5, all those who played for you in Ateneo, who would that be, your starting 5?
Oh my gosh.
And after that, all the players who played for you in the PBA, who would be your starting 5 in the PBA?
Oh, that's hard. You have
I know, right?
About that, but I can tackle it. But give me at least 7 guys. Give me a team.
I'll give you up to the 6th man. I'll give you up to the 6th man, Coach.
I had a lot of good point guards in Ateneo when I was coaching there. But my best point guard was L.A. Tenorio. Mm-hmm. I actually told him this during the championship series. He is still by far the best outlet passer I've ever had as a player. I've never seen a guy who makes an outlet pass like LA. And you would think he would not be able to do that because he's small, right? He's not exactly a big guy. When you think of outlet passers, you think of centers, power forwards, they get it off the board and then they move the ball up the court.
Right.
But LA is probably the best long court passer you're going to find. I mean, he's really accurate, and I found that out. And even up to this day, he's a very good passer. But he was very durable in college. He didn't miss any games. He's been very durable in the pros. I don't think he's missed any games. And even though I didn't win any championships with LA, he basically carried our team. And we probably would have had a lot more success if Larry Funishera had not torn his ACL in college. We were on our way, and then actually that was the year where I was consulted, but we were on our way to, I thought, to winning a championship, and then Larry went down with an ACL, and it was really he and LA who were the stars of the team. So I would say LA, and don't get mad at me, Jai, please. I'm in Mumford and Wami Chongson and all my other point guards over the years. Please don't get mad at me. But I would say LA would probably be the best point guard. At the center position, wow.
Yeah.
Obviously, the most successful was Rabbi Hosseini. He had a couple of years where he was just great, particularly the year where he won the MVP award. I mean, he was a very, very dominant player for us out there. But at the same time, you have to remember, I coached Greg Slaughter too. So that's a toss-up as far as the center position goes between the two guys. Power forward, wow. Remember, Japhet Aguilar also coached at Ateneo before he went to Western Kentucky. He was a young guy then, but he was a very good player for us. Great shot blocker, great rebounder for us.
Ford?
You have to think about it. Yeah, Ford Arau was a very good player for us also.
Noy Baclao?
Noy Baclao. Okay, thank you, Rick. I'm forgetting everybody at this point because there were a lot of good guys. People forget that Nico South actually played power forward for us. Yeah. And he was very good at the power forward position. It's hard. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm not being very specific about who those guys are, but we had a lot of good power forwards over the years. I would say Noy Baclao was probably the best defender at that position for us. Okay. He's also part of Morocco now, so hopefully he'll be well soon by the end of June. Small forward, well, there's no question the most talented guy was Ryan Winifred that I coached. Ryan was the most talented. I mean, Ryan should be in the PBA right now. He should be a star if he could just control his weight. But he led us to 4 championships, and he was just multi-talented. Ryan probably could have done more individually while he was at Ateneo, but he really, everything turned around when he was part of that recruiting class that came in with him and Nico Salva and Vince Burke and Justin Chua. Yeah. And I think it was Zags. Yeah. Gonzaga also was part of that recruiting class. He might have come the year earlier, but he actually joined them because he spent 1 year on Team B. Right.
Two guard, is it Chris Chu?
Yeah, I would have to go with Chris. I would have to go with Chris mainly because the girls just loved him. It was crazy. I always tell this story about Chris Chu because I didn't really know much about Chris Chu when I first joined the team. And if you remember, we used to play in the Blue Eagle gym every year against the alumni.
Yeah.
To play against either the PBA player alumni or whoever the alumni who was still in shape, who had just graduated from Ateneo. And I didn't really know Chris that well. 1 year we played there in the Blue Eagle gym. And for some reason, Chris was the last person announced coming out of the dugout. And when they announced his name, I had never been a part of this before, so this is my first time. They announced his name and he went out. All you heard was all these girls screaming, "Ah, Chris Chu, Chris Chu." And I was like, what in the world is going on here? So he was not just a good player because he was the King Eagle. Remember, Chris Chu was part of my first UAP championship team. And he was the best player on the team that year. He was the player that we went to in the clutch almost every single game. But he was very popular too, particularly with the ladies. I know his wife's not going to want to hear that, but he was really popular with the girls back in those days. And yeah, Chris would stand out as a 2 guard. There's no question about that. Even though I did have some other guys who were very, very 2 good 2 guards also, like Eric Salaman.
Okay, let's go to your PBA players, those who played under you. This one's going to be tougher because he had a lot of teams in the PBA.
Well, before we move on, let me not forget one guy.
Okay.
Kiefer Ravenna. I seem to have forgotten Kiefer somewhere down the line because he was part of the last 2 championship teams. But he probably helped us get over the hump in those last 2 championships when he came in. We recruited him in, and he became a star immediately for us, particularly in his second year. And I don't want to forget him too because
Well, you're allowed.
I don't think we would have won those last 2 championships without him. So I don't want to forget Kiefer.
Definitely, yeah. All right.
Now, my problem with the pros is that I'm so biased. I mean,
go.
Every time I think of the best players I coached in the PBA, I always think first of the guys I played with. Because remember, I'm a former player. I'm different from Coach Tim. You know, I actually played in the league for quite a few years. Yeah. And a lot of times my biasness goes back to the guys that I played with. Like we mentioned earlier, guys like Hector Calmer and Ricky Brown and Samboy Lim and Juan Fernandez. I mean, Abby Gudabin. These guys stand out in my mind first before anything. But when I think about it, and you think later on, I actually coached Marlo Aquino and Dennis Espino, and I coached Ali Peak, and I coached Nick Velasco, and I coached Nelson Asaitono and
Jimmy Lapa.
Hel Meneses, very, very good player. Ricky Brown, for that matter. I mean, I'm sorry, Jimmy Alapag. So I've had an opportunity to coach some really, really good players over the years. Gary David, very good player also. But I'm always biased. I always go back to when I played, the guys I played with. You know, I always tell stories about my relationships with the players that I played with over the years. Like a guy like Yves Dignadise, you probably wouldn't think much of anymore, even though he was a national team player for quite a while, and he was a key part of our San Miguel Grand Slam. But Yves had my back. I mean, when I played as an import, Yves, Alvin Ting, Jeffrey Graves, you could probably give me a dirty shot if you wanted, but they would get you back. There'd be no question about that. So obviously I have a lot of biasness towards these guys because I went to war with them.
No,
but guys like Hector Calmer, best point guard, one of the best point guards I've ever seen. Ricky Brown, one of the best players I've ever seen. Samboy Lim. People seem to forget that Samboy, for Hell, and I would say Kenneth DeRimdes. And you might want to throw Nelson Asaitono in there a little bit. 4 of the most exciting players ever to play in the PBA. High flyers, would dunk on you if given the opportunity. These are the type of guys that I grew up around. Of course, I didn't get a chance to play with Kenneth DeRimdes, but I did play with Samboy Lim. I coached Nelson Asaitono. And then let's not forget Alan Kayadik, Otto Augustine. I mean, guys who were just spectacular players. I played against Otto Augustine in the amateurs. I actually played as an import. I reinforced the team that played against the team that he was on. And I figured out immediately that this guy was going to be a star. I mean, he was just unstoppable in the exhibition game that I played against him. And I was just so fortunate to choose Otto in the second round. I think he was the first pick of the second round, the year that I chose him in the draft. I think we chose Bobby Jose as our first round pick, and we chose Otto as our second round pick. And he ended up just being a superstar for us, MVP of the league. Alan Kayadik, everybody knows the trigger man. You can always tell how good a player is when he has a nickname. And Alan was the trigger man because he never saw a shot he didn't like, But the thing everybody should understand about Alan, because they always talk about how great of a three-point shooter he was. Alan Kayadik might have been one of the best post-up guards ever in the history of the league.
That's true.
And he could post up anybody and shoot over you in the post. So those are things that people might not really remember. And like I said, I'm a little bit biased to the guys that were there when I was playing. But at the same time, we have a lot of good players now in the league. And particularly with the San Miguel team, they don't get a lot of credit. when I think about the San Miguel team now, I think about our San Miguel team before. And not because I want to compare the players or anything like that, but we had a lot of good players who were really good individually, but they sacrificed to become a really good team. And I think that has been one of the keys to the success of the San Miguel team right now. Individually, Lassiter is a really good player. And I'm not talking about a one-way player. This guy can play offense and defense. He handles the ball well enough to take pressure off of the point guard. He can defend just about any guard in the league. He's probably one of the best shooters in the league. He probably can be averaging over 20 points a game if he was playing for a lower team, but he sacrifices for the good of the San Miguel team. And the same thing with Arwen Santos, even though he's getting up there in age. Let's face it, I mean, Arwen is still a really good player. And he probably could do a lot more out there on the basketball court, but he even sacrifices playing time just for them to win games. So that's what it takes. I mean, you can play with a lot of good players, you can have a lot of good players, but at the same time, you have to put that talent together to make a good team. And I probably did not answer your question about my top players, but I did mention a lot. So
last question before I turn it over to Coach Ariel and Doc Teddy. Since I've been following you during our Ateneo days, you always had this mania for statistics. You have even your own statisticians on the team taking stats or stuff that don't show on the stat sheet. Why should a coach be very particular about statistics, Coach?
Well, it might have a little bit to do with the fact that I was a player. And I know for a fact that production is everything. Mm-hmm. I always tell my players, never put the cart before the horse. Don't tell me if I play you more, you'll produce more. No, produce more and I'll play you more. That's the way it goes. So I've always been into production. I mean, not necessarily always how many points you score, how many rebounds did you grab, right, how many assists do you have. Those are things that you can actually feel when you can say, well, this guy's helping me in this area, this guy's helping me in that area. Of course, there are other things, intangibles that you can't feel, like setting good screens, making the hockey pass. You know, some guys will only make that pass if it's for an assist. They won't make the pass to the pass. You know, they just want to get the assist. You know, coaches recognize those type of things and they evaluate them. But I've always been in statistics, particularly when it comes to things like rebounding the basketball. Are you playing as a team? Are you moving the basketball? How many assists do you have? I mean, the one thing, I guess I shouldn't say I love other teams, but the one thing I love about the Ginebra team is I love their ball movement. I love the fact that they always lead the league in assists. You know, they're unselfish. That's how you win basketball games. So those are the type of stats I'm looking for. Things have gotten a little bit deeper than that now because of analytics. And I have to be quite honest with you and straight with you. I'm really into analytics. I mean, I'm all over it. I know I'm an older coach, a veteran coach who grew up probably during a time where most coaches said, no, I just go by my gut feel. Yeah, I agree with you. You should go by your gut feel. You should go off your experience of all the years you've been coaching, but at the same time, you shouldn't be left behind and not really recognize that you need to analyze the game also. And analytics can help you. It can tell you what players will do. It tells you where the other teams take their shots. Right. It tells you exactly how the other team is trying to perform. For instance, I'll give you an example. We only averaged 98 points per game this past conference in the PBA. But if you look at the analytics, we're the second most efficient offensive team in the league behind Ginebra. Why? Because we average the points per possession. We're number 2 in the league. Now, what do we need to do? We need to have more possessions, either by forcing more turnovers or maybe getting out and running a little bit more and speeding up the game, telling my point guard, push the ball a little bit more. Hey, we're really efficient, but we just don't put up enough shots. That's what I mean by analytics. You would think that if you would look at us, you'd say, oh man, they're number 8 in the league in offense, as far as scoring points are concerned. But if you look at it and you analyze it, no, actually, we're a really efficient team. We shoot the basketball really well in the course of the game. The problem is we don't get enough possessions. So now you can understand why I'm trying to recruit guys that can get me up and down the court a little bit quicker. That's why I love Abaron Quinto, the fact that he wants to get out and run the floor, because now I want to get more possessions. Yeah, we're efficient. We don't have enough possessions. How can we get more possessions? Now I've got to put in players and recruit players that are willing to get out and run. So that's what I mean by analytics, analyzing your team. So yeah, I'm into production. I'm into statistics. I'm into analyzing the game. And yeah, I want to go by my gut feel, but I want to make sure I know the analytics side of it too. I don't want to get left behind.
Right. Coach, the reason why I asked that, because when you had Jimmy Alapago on the show the other night, he actually said that he learned so much from you by watching you do your analytics and all that stuff. He said he's never seen a coach more prepared. So that's why I asked the question.
Well, I love Jimmy, so I mean, Jimmy can always come and work for me. That's for sure. He can always be a part of my team. I mean, he's one of the hardest workers I've ever seen. He's the type of coach that you don't have to tell him what to do. I mean, he's going to get there early in the court, and he's going to tell the players, hey, I'm going to be here 2 hours early. You be here when I'm here. And those players will be on the court, and they'll be working out with him for an hour and a half before our practice starts. And you know, he talks a certain game, but he walks a certain game. And I have a lot of respect for him. Like I said, I love him as a person. I love him as a player. And it was a pleasure for me to work with him. That's for sure.
Thanks, Coach. For those attending this webinar, I worked with Coach Norman also in Meralco for 3 years. I was like their writer. Coach Ariel and Doc Teddy. Coach. Coach Ariel.
Coach Real.
Doc.
Yeah. There. Coach Real.
Yeah, in terms of attitude and mentality, how different were the PBA players of the 80s and 90s compared to the current players, Coach? That's a question from Coach Robbie.
I think I can truly say in both eras, the players have been very professional. Let me tell you a story about the PBA. And this isn't just about the players. I'll answer your question in a second, but this is about the league in general. If you would ask any import who's been here, he will tell you that the Philippines is one of the best places that you can play overseas.
Yeah.
He will cite that because he will say that the league is professional. Once they recruit you, they're very honest with you. You have to play well when you get here, unless you have a guaranteed contract which most imports don't have. If you don't play well, then there's a possibility you will be replaced. But if you do play well and your team does well, then everything that was promised you will be given to you. That does not happen all around the world. Sometimes you can go to a country and they'll say they'll pay you this, and then once you get there, you don't receive that. And that happens a lot. So players around the world respect the Philippines because of the league's professionalism. And with that said, I believe in my mind, if I think back to the 80s and the 90s, and I think about my team today, they're just as professional now as they were back in the 80s and 90s. I don't recall ever having any problems with my teams in the 80s and 90s as far as their professionalism. I think that we had great leaders back in those days. I think Sonny Jaworski was the #1 leader when it came to the players. I learned so much from him on how to handle the fans. The one memory I have is some players, initially when I arrived here in the Philippines, because remember, it wasn't like today where, even in the UAP for that matter, it wasn't like the day where security stops the fans from going into certain areas and the players have a free walk to their car where they can get in their car quite easily without anybody bothering them today. Back in those days, for you to get to your car, you would have to go through the fans. That's basically what you would have to do. And I saw some players who would just walk through the fans and keep walking. And then I saw Sonny Jaworski, who would stop And if he had to spend an hour or an hour and a half signing autographs, because remember, there were no cell phones back in those days, you had to sign something. And he would give a dedication. He would ask you your name, and he would just take the time until everybody was finished before he would leave. And I witnessed this. And it actually taught me how to act professionally here in the Philippines. And I think a lot of the players followed him, like the Alvin Patrimonials and some of the other guys in the league. They followed his example over the years. But even today, I see the players being very professional. I know my players come to work every single day. I don't have to tell my guys to get there an hour early for practice. They're there an hour early. They're there an hour and a half early. They're getting in the weight room. They're getting on the court, getting their shots up. They're very professional in the way they handle themselves. And I think that's because of the league. I think that comes from the leadership of the league. I think the leadership of the league, it carries over with the players. And that's how I would analyze it. I would say it's probably about the same.
Right. There's some questions from YouTube. Can you hear me, Teddy, now?
Yes,
Better?
Coach. Can hear
All
you.
right, all right. Okay. Hello, Coach. This is from Jello Supan. How would you assess your championship seasons with Ateneo and those with Coach Tab today? What do you see in common and what makes yours unique? And if ever, oh, that's it. That's a question. I think you answered the follow-up.
Well, I have to be quite honest with you. I did not follow the team very much this past year. I did watch their games when Aaron was on the team. I attended the games. But this past year, he was not on the team, so I didn't really follow them very much. But I actually worked with Coach Tab. I was part of his staff with the national team for a couple of the tournaments we played in. So I pretty much know his philosophy as a coach. And the one thing that we both have in common is we like to play defense. We want our teams to play defense at every opportunity. I mean, you have to defend. His defense is a lot different from mine. I mean, he's into the, pick up full court and pressure you all over the court and force turnovers, et cetera, et cetera. I'm more into protecting the basket and controlling the rebounds. Both systems can work. Both systems have worked, but it's a completely different way of looking at the defensive end of the court. I was never a pressure guy, full court, steal the ball at half court, going for a layup type of guy as a player. I was more of a defend the paint, challenge shots, and make sure they don't get a second chance at the shot, control the rebounds, in other words. So in that sense, we're both defensive oriented coaches. I think the teams are probably a little bit different in the fact that I probably pushed my upperclassmen a little bit more because, and I've talked to Coach Tab about this. Whenever I recruited players at Ateneo, how we would do it would be that Paulo and I would probably go to the school where that player was playing. If given the opportunity, we would talk to his parents. We would talk to the principal. We would talk to his coach at that school, particularly if it was in the province. And we knew when we were recruiting those players, one, they had to be able to study, otherwise they wouldn't last at Ateneo. I did lose a few players at Ateneo, but when I recruited, I tried to make sure at least that they understood they had to study when they arrived. But more importantly, the players were going to Ateneo not just to get an education, but to eventually have an opportunity to play professional basketball. That's why, if you notice, over the years, I probably pushed my juniors and seniors a little bit more than I did my freshmen and sophomores. I wanted to give them every opportunity to be able to graduate from Ateneo and hopefully be drafted into the PBA and have a chance to play in the PBA. So I would bring my freshmen and my sophomores along a little bit slower than I would say. There's only 2 lower classmen that really got a lot of playing time with me, maybe 3. One would be Kiefer, obviously. The other one would be Ryan. And then the third one would probably be, he might not remember this, but Art Dela Cruz probably played about 12, 13 minutes for me his first year in college. And he played some meaningful minutes for me when he was in Ateneo for 1 year. But other than that, they normally had to go up the ladder. I normally favored the juniors and seniors a lot more because I knew those are the guys who were graduating and I wanted to give them an opportunity to shine and be able to move on. I don't know whether Coach Tab really follows that type of system or has that type of thought pattern, but that was always what I wanted to do when I was there. But I think we're pretty much the same when it comes to winning. We want to win. When you coach at Ateneo, there is no other choice, actually.
Yeah.
It's better to go out there and try to win as many games as you can. I remember when I first arrived at Ateneo and I started coaching there, the alumni used to tell me that I don't care what you do. You don't have to win any other games. Just beat LaSalle. Just beat LaSalle. And I took that to heart that, yeah, okay, we just have to beat LaSalle, right? But that was not true. Yeah,
You have to win.
they wanted us to beat everybody else too, you know? And it was always a problem when you weren't winning. So my first 3 years there was, you know, it was an adventure. It was exciting. But luckily for me, by the time we got to our 4th year, we had that really great recruiting class, like I mentioned earlier, with Ryan and Nico Salva and Justin Chua and Vince Burke. And there's one more I'm missing right now from that group. And that group really, we added that to what we already had, and that's what really spurred us on to win. And we had guys like Rabbi was already there, Jai Reyes was already there, Eric Salamet was already there. So we did have some players. And when we added it all up, we started having a lot of success. But yeah, I would think the thing we have in common is the fact that we won when I was there, and he's winning now. They've won 3 straight championships already. And I would say they're probably, you know, hands down favorites going into next year.
Which one is more fun? College or PBA? Coaching.
I love coaching. I mean, you would think that I'm coaching a long time, I might be sick of it already, but I love it. I mean, I love going to work. I love the guys that I'm working with right now. I would say they're both the same as far as I'm concerned. And I say that with all honesty. The only difference is in the pros, you have a drafting system. So you draft the players who are available to you when your turn comes to draft. Obviously, if you have your choice, you'll take the best player to draft, right? If you could, but that's not always the case. I mean, yes, I would like to have the best player in the draft, but I have the number 9 pick, so I have to take the 9th best player in the draft. Hopefully, he'll be the 9th best player in the draft. So that's how you have to build your team. You either do it that way or you do it through free agency, which nobody's giving away players, particularly big guys, so you're not going to really get that much better through free agency. Or you do it through trades, where you just have to get lucky that you at least get an even trade where you get something, a piece that you might need to help you win games. But in college, it's completely different. I mean, I went all over the country to recruit. I went as far north as Baguio, La Union, as far south as General Santos and Cebu and Davao, and you name it, I was there. Bacolod, Iloilo. We recruited from just about everywhere, Cagayan de Oro. And obviously, when you can go out and recruit and bring guys in, it's a lot easier for you to form a championship team faster, because now you're getting the guys you want. Of course, you're competing with the other schools, but the one thing I will say with Ateneo, because their networking is great. I mean, they have alumni all over the country, mainly because they have schools all over the country. And they will tell you where the best players are. I mean, guys will tell me they have a star player in Cebu, or they have a star player in Cagayan de Oro. You should come down and watch these guys. And we will just fly in and watch them and try to recruit them. That's what they really came down to. So that would be the difference. I mean, I love coaching at the pro level. I love coaching at the college level. I love coaching at the college level. But at the same time, it was easier for me to mold that championship team together in the amateur ranks and the college ranks, because I could recruit the players that I wanted. I could go out and say, hey, that's the nail. And if he said yes, we could recruit him. In the PBA, it's a little bit more difficult because you really have to recruit the players too.
Right.
Ruben Torrado of Spin has got a question. Ruben?
Hi, Coach. Good evening. I have a follow-up question for you with regards to the recruitment. What do you think was the most memorable recruiting trip that you had? Not necessarily based on the player or the talent, maybe because of the trip or something like that.
Well, the one that stands out in my mind, there's been a lot of them. It's probably actually, I had to go down there at least 3 or 4 times. Was probably recruiting Noy Baklao.
Okay.
From West Negros College.
Mm-hmm.
From Tony Agasti, who was the owner of the school. And I remember first seeing, Ateneo, we didn't really shy away from playing teams when I was at Ateneo. We played just about anybody. I mean, we played in the university games. We played everywhere. People only remember the 5 championships we won at Ateneo when I was there, but we actually won 16 championships while I was at Ateneo because we played in every league possible. And we normally won most of them. And we played in university games, and that was in Bacolod. Yes. Now, as you know, West Negros College is in Bacolod.
Yes.
And West Negros College was one of the teams playing in the university games. I first saw Noy Baklao. And Noy Baklao was about 6'5", but he was so skinny. I mean, he was just a skinny kid at that time. And I think he was in his first year in college. And he was blocking everybody's shot. I mean, anybody coming to the basket, he was just throwing it away. I was talking to Paulo Trillo, and I was saying, boy, it'd be nice to have a guy like that on our team. All we would have to do is get him to eat a little bit so he could fill out and gain some weight. His timing was impeccable on the defensive end of the court. So it became a task. It became an assignment for us to see if we could actually recruit Noy to go to Ateneo. And we had to talk to Tony, and we went back and forth to Bacolod over and over again. We actually met with Noy's parents. And finally, we were able to get him to come to Ateneo. And I don't really want to go into the background and know anything like that, but I was just so happy when we were able to recruit him. And up to now, I still have a relationship with Tony Agasti because of this. And obviously, Noy was a big part of our teams in helping us win championships at Ateneo. In addition to that, I just have one more story, one more recruitment story, okay? Like I said, we used to play in the university games. They always took place in Bacolod. And I think it was Seelye. Seelye is a town right outside of the Bacolod city proper. And they used to hold some of the games there. And one year, we decided to recruit a player from Iloilo. His name was Emin Mumford. And we were being sent tapes of Emin Mumford. And the guy was scoring 40 points a game in high school. I mean, he was just lighting people up, despite the fact he looked like he was only about 5'5", 5'6". He was just killing people in these tapes. So when we were in Bacolod, we decided to ask Emin and his mother to take a boat. As you know, you can take a boat from Iloilo to Bacolod, called Iloilo, to take a boat from Iloilo to Bacolod, and then take a car drive to Seelye, where we had practice. The Ateneo team had practice. And we decided to ask him to come over so that we could let him practice with our team. And he did. He came over and he enters the gym. And I look at Paulo and I say, Paulo, who is this kid? And he looked like he was in grade school when he walked in our gym. And he walked in and, he's a short guy, but he's got muscles coming out of his head, and he gets on the basketball court. And he's like a spitfire. I mean, he's just moving up and down the court. It's hard to stay in front of him. Defensively, he's pressuring the basketball. And we decided right then and there that we were going to recruit Emin Mumford. And Emin actually became a big part of our championship teams at Ateneo. So a couple of my very memorable recruiting trips actually took place in Bacolod with Noy Baklao and Emin Mumford.
Coach, should we have time for one more question?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With your long history in the PBA and in the UAAP, could you kindly give us 5 qualities that a coach should possess in order to be successful? Thanks, Coach.
Honesty is important. When I say honesty, I mean with your players. The players will always know when you're not honest with them. You got to be able to look them in the eye, and they have to believe in what you're saying. So you need to be honest as possible, because especially players today can read through you very, very quickly. So I think honesty is very, very important. You got to be hardworking to be a good coach. I've run into so many guys over the years, because coaches can feel when other guys are pretty good at what they do. I mean, I've worked with guys who are just, I've worked with Chuck Reyes, who I think is one of the best offensive minds I've ever worked with. I mean, defensively, he's not really that interested, but offensively, I mean, he's got it. I mean, he can come up with plays on a spur. I mean, so you know when guys have it, but everybody's not willing to put in the work it takes. And I'm not saying Chuck's one of those, because he's a great coach. I mean, he's 5-time coach of the year, and he's won a lot of championships. I'm not referring to him. I'm just using him as an example of a guy that you can tell he has talent. You know, he's got talent. So there have been a lot of coaches I've been associated with that had that feel for the game, and I knew they had that talent, but they just weren't willing to put in the time. And what I mean by the time is sometimes you got to stay up to 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning watching tape. I mean, you just don't have any other choice. I remember we used to play against LaSalle and when I was in college at Ateneo. And I used to hate playing against Franz Pomarin for one simple reason. And Franz is my former teammate. I won 9 championships with him in the PBA. But LaSalle would have about 25 plays. And somehow, some way, Franz Pomarin would run all 25 of those plays every single game, at least once. Some he would run more, but he would probably get to all 25 before the game was over. So if you were preparing for them, you would have to study all 25 of those plays. If you didn't study all 25 of those players and he came up with a new play, you would never know what that new play is, because you don't even know his old plays. And what I'm trying to say, and the point I'm making is, sometimes you have to put the work in. You have to be prepared. Your players will see immediately if you're not prepared. And that's what I mean by honesty. You can't BS the players. If you're not prepared, they will know. They will know. So you have to be hardworking. You got to get it done. Like I said, honesty, sincerity is very important also. You have to have a willingness to learn. And I'm always asked the question, aren't you tired of coaching? Don't you, you've been doing it for so long. And well, I think myself, Tim Cohn, I would even go as far as to say Yang Gao, Leo Austria has been around for quite a while also, even though people don't realize it. He coached a long time against me in the UAAP. For you to stay relevant, you have to keep learning. And I'm not saying that the fundamentals of the game of basketball are changing, because they're not. They're still the same. But sometimes the terminology changes. Sometimes you can pick up a drill here, pick up a drill there. You always have ways of learning. Analytics. I mean, 10 years ago, basically you had stats, but you weren't analyzing all the stats like the NBA teams do today. So you have to have the ability to always be out there trying to learn and get better, trying to get better at your craft. And that's just life. I mean, you don't want to become stagnant. You always want to be able to get better, to improve yourself. So your ability to go out there and learn. I love going to clinics. I love going to basketball clinics. I love being part of basketball clinics. I love going to the States and going to the Nike clinics, NCAA clinics, whatever it may be, just so I can learn more from other people. And maybe you can go to a basketball clinic and only pick up 1 or 2 things, but those 1 or 2 things you can bring back and it may help you win a basketball game. So it's important that you try to learn as much as possible. And stay even keel. You know, everybody says I've won a lot of championships. I've lost a lot of games too. And, you know, my ability to stay somewhere in the middle and not to get too high when I'm winning and not to get too low when I'm losing is what keeps me around. The fact that I can stay stable under pressure. So otherwise, you may beat yourself up every time you lose a basketball game, because we're in a different sport. I mean, whether you're in the UAP, whether you're in the PBA, it's the same. If you lose a game, the next day, everybody in the Philippines knows you lost. If you're losing to Ginebra and I go out to the mall, somebody's gonna say, hey, Black, talo ka, talo, you lost to Ginebra. You know, somebody's gonna remind me of that. So you gotta keep your, you know, keep even, don't get too high, don't get too low, don't get stressed out as much as possible. I hope that answered your question.
It did, Coach. Thank you so much.
Again,
Right.
Rick, I know there's a lot of questions, but we have to end, unfortunately. But Rick, any more?
Well, I just want to show this. I don't know if you can see it. This is an autograph that Coach Norman signed for me back in 1992. I showed this to him before the 2008 championship. He signed it for me, and we were both having lunch at the A&W restaurant at Robinson's Galleria. I approached him and I asked, Coach, can I get an autograph? And he said, sure, but can I finish my hamburger? He did, and I didn't expect him to go back to me in my table, but he did. And I have that autograph. He dated it May 12, 1992. So I'm just so happy that I still have it.
1992?
Yep. Ricky.
Old Rick?
I took a picture of it. It says Ricky, best of luck, Norman, SMB number 24.
Almost 28 years ago.
92.
But, you know, this has been a fantastic session with a multi-awarded coach. We want to thank all the participants for all their questions, the panelists. We had Dr. Eddie Villasor, obviously Ruben Tirado, my colleague in the media. As always, we want to thank Blackwater Elite for this fantastic webinar. There's so much, and just, you know, we wish we could go on, but we got to let Coach Norman go, and we've got a time limit. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending this, for all the questions. Coach Ariel, I'm turning it back to you.
Yes, again, I'd like to thank you, Coach, and also for your donation to our cause. You've sent a lot of books and boards, and thank you so much.
Maraming salamat din. Thank you.
Thank you. And proceed. The next one, the next speaker will be on 8:30. So you have to go out from this Zoom and go into that other meeting. Teddy, you were saying?
I just wanted to thank Coach Norman again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Coach, and good luck. And hopefully PBA will happen soon, because I know Meralco's a contender. So, but hopefully we're all praying for that. And of course, with the latest developments. So hopefully we end this pandemic soon. But just parting words, Coach, for everyone.
Yeah, let's look forward to the PBA, but at the same time, let's make sure we understand there are a lot of people suffering right now and struggling because of this pandemic. Let's hope things can get back to normal as quickly as possible so everybody can get their lives back to normal. And hey, I miss basketball. Can't wait to get back.
Yes, all of us, Coach, all of us. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
To that, again, see you again 8:30. Quick dinner for us coaches, and good night.
Good night.
Good night, Coach.
Good night.